This video is brought to you by Currently. Save time by skipping the wait at a charging station. Currently delivers charging to your car, your home, the office, wherever you want it. Download the app and use promo code OUTOFSPEC and get 30 days of free charging delivery. Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You joined me here at the office, which means we are talking charging curves on the F-150 Lightning. Now this is actually a pretty complicated curve to try and sort of reverse engineer, if you will, figure out exactly what Ford is doing with their charging strategy for the F-150 Lightning. I may not know everything, but I have learned a lot in my 10 days of testing with it, road tripping it constantly. We put, I think, a few thousand miles on the F-150 Lightning and a ton at DC fast chargers. I've also recorded a full 0 to 90% DC fast charging session, and I'll explain why I stopped at 90 and what happens after 90 and all of that good stuff. So get ready for a whole topic on charging the F-150 Lightning at DC fast chargers. So for the last week, I have been testing the F-150 Lightning, and actually been longer than that. We have been super lucky to play around with the truck. And of course, in this video, we are talking about the charging curve. I do want to make a note that says this is on the initial production release software. And I'm sure Ford will adapt things over time, as we've seen them do with Mustang Mach-E. And right off the bat, if you don't want to watch this super long video, this is for like people buying the F-150 Lightning that are super nerds like me that want to know all the crazy stuff. I got all the data for you. This is just going to be, just hell to watch for anyone who's not interested in this stuff. So skip the video if you want to see us drifting around the track or something fun like that. This is all about charging and nerdy stuff. So F-150 Lightning extended range, that's the 131 kilowatt hour usable battery pack that Ford claims will be charging up here and doing the test. A couple things to note. I'm sort of on this one screen approach, so forgive a lot of the different blocks, but I'll walk you through what you want to be looking at with my cursor here. On the left-hand side is all of the CAN data we're pulling out of the truck. This relies on production grade sensors, which means not laboratory grade sensors built into the truck, which the truck is constantly adapting to. And I've hand selected a lot of these different menus here for us to look at throughout, and I'm going to explain what each one of these blocks looks at. In the middle here is the EVgo DC fast charger that we've used. Now, the reason I've gone to an EVgo DC fast charger, specifically this particular charging station, the actual provider makes no difference to me, but I do like that EVgo shows volts and amps that the charger is delivering and matching the voltage. And it's also a 500 amp capable 350 kilowatt unit. Now, I think it's no secret, and I've mentioned in other videos, the F-150 has a relatively low pack voltage. What that means is it's about like low 300s dead and not quite 400 fully charged. And for that truck to reach a very high charging rate means it needs a ton of current, needs a lot of amperage being run to it. And so at a 150 kilowatt charger, you're not going to get really 150 kilowatts out of this truck. And that requires a little bit more testing because some 150 kilowatt branded chargers do output more than 350 amps, but not many. And this truck requests 470 amps peak, almost the full 500, that only most of the time 350 kilowatt stations can output. It's a little bit of a weird situation because I feel like most of the general public is just getting used to kilowatt numbers, going to a 350 kilowatt charger or a 150 kilowatt charger. The problem is it really depends on your vehicle type as to how fast you're going to charge at each of those individual chargers, not the charger. And so in the case of the F-150 Lightning, you actually need a really big boy charger in order to reach high speeds. And I think the best case in point of that is the 125 kilowatt branded ChargePoint CPE 250 units that we use for our range test. The F-150 has relatively low pack voltage. If you watch some of our efficiency comparisons, I show you the difference between the Rivian and the F-150 charging on the same charging station. The F-150 charges at about 70 kilowatts, where the Rivian charges about 80 kilowatts because it's just got more pack voltage for the same 200 amps that charger can deliver. Okay, so that's kind of the topic, and maybe I'll make a whole dedicated video on that, but I just want you to be aware going into this that to get big speeds on F-150 Lightning, you need big current chargers. That means 500 amp capable chargers to reach your peak speeds. The truck I've seen request about 470 amps peak, which is an enormous amount of energy. Just for comparison's sakes, the Rivian R1T, which I have other videos on, will request the full 500 amps, but all the way up to about 440 volts. And so the Rivian can do like 219, 220 kilowatts, where the F-150 Lightning, for just a little bit less amperage, can do about 170, 175 maybe peak. And so that's the benefit of voltage. But that's really the only benefit of high voltage. There are some others when driving, but the battery pack doesn't really care either way. Again, topic for another video. So let me walk you through over here on the left-hand side all of the different units that I've chosen to show you here. The one all the way on the left is what I would refer to as state of energy, or high voltage battery state of charge is how Ford displays it. And this is, by the way, using an OBD2 reader, just a general one. I don't have one in front of me, but just a general OBD wireless reader to a regular Android phone. This is like my burner Android phone that I used for this to do screen recording, and it uses an app called Car Scanner, and you can customize all the different values you want to pull from it. So at about 0% indicated state of charge, which is this 0.5, so 0.5% indicated to the user state of charge, there's still about 4% left in the total battery pack. And you'll actually see that number flip, where when we get up to about 100% state of charge displayed to the user, there's actually only about 96, 95% charge of the battery total usable capacity. And there's two different explanations here. There is a buffer where the Ford will not let you use all of the usable capacity, but there's also a little bit of driving range past zero. Now, I don't recommend going into there unless it's an absolute emergency, and we are testing this on a fresh pack. The pack, there is a setting in here I don't have pulled up to you right now, but it basically showed 100% state of health. We had a completely fresh battery pack. As the battery packs age, we don't know if it's going to eat some of that degradation into this buffer, meaning it's no longer going to be usable, if the BMS is going to sway. So don't rely on driving past zero, but it is possible, at least on a fresh pack like I showed you. But again, don't rely on it unless you're in an emergency. So basically, I always plug in the trucks or cars on a charging test as soon as it dips from 1% to 0% state of charge, and that's exactly what we've done here, and that's user displayed. There's about 4.7 kilowatt hours left in the battery pack according to this energy to empty right here, and it seems to cut off at about 2 kilowatt hours. So there's still a buffer that it won't let you go down. And I found that out during the range test when I ran the thing out of charge, which was hilarious. And if you haven't seen that video, it's great. A viewer came out, we were pushing it. That was just awesome. Over here is our total system voltage of the high voltage system. So 317.5 volts dead, really, really low voltage, especially for modern EVs. And again, they can work their way around it, and that's fine. It's not the end of the world, but it just requires a lot of charging current to do it. Here's the real-time battery pack power, what's going in or out. So while it's going to be DC fast charging, this is what's going to make it into the battery pack. This number just below, the EV charging power, is what's coming into the port on the truck. So there's three different values we need to look at when DC fast charging. The first is, what is the charger outputting? And it'll show us that on the EVgo screen. What's making it to the inlet plug on the truck? That's what this number is going to be. And then after the truck uses some energy to run air conditioning compressor or pumps and all of these things, what's actually making it into the battery pack? And that's this number right here, this 0.53 at the moment, just because the truck's unplugged and it's burning half a kilowatt just to run itself. The high voltage battery current, that's how many amps are going into it. This charge power limit seems to not be related to DC fast charging as much as it is, I think, regen limit. So I think this is its regen limit. I could be wrong. Again, a week with a truck sounds like a lot of time, 10 days with a truck, but let me tell you, I did not have enough time to fully sort of, benchmark everything the way I would want to do, mostly because I was traveling halfway through I had it. So we'll get an F-150 Lightning back again at some point. We can definitely figure out some questions that we have, but I'm fairly certain this is the regen limit. I just, for some reason, messed up and I have two battery pack voltages here. I've also gone through and selected the lowest battery pack temperature sensor, and the hottest. So the coldest and the hottest. Again, the battery pack is huge. There's a lot of thermal mass. It's a big distance. There's going to be varying temperature readings throughout. And so basically I said, show me what the coldest spot is and the hottest spot. And surprisingly, the F-150 Lightning seems to do a very good job of keeping those close when charging. When you're driving, there is some sway, and that's totally normal, no big deal. I've chosen the high voltage battery coolant inlet. This is the temperature of which the coolant is flowing into the battery pack. And this will give us a really good indication to if the truck is trying to warm the battery pack or cool the battery pack. So if we see the coolant inlet significantly lower than the battery pack temperature, we know that the truck's like, oh, I'm getting warm and I'm cooling myself down. Again, it's all liquid thermal management here. We just have our 12-volt battery pack voltage, our high voltage battery age here, 3 months old. The truck was 3 months old. And then this is your air conditioning unit compressor. This is how many amps are being run to it. So when it does kick on subambient chilling, which is this bottom right here, this will show us how much power is going to it. This truck that we are testing has the max trailer tow option, which gives the cooling upgrade. And the cooling upgrade is purely just an additional air conditioning compressor in the coolant loop to basically double the cooling capacity, and essentially, plus or minus. And that to me seems pretty useful. We towed with this thing on some of the hottest days with big loads and lots of fast charging. And by far, the F-150 Lightning in the real world, in our testing, had much more stable thermal management and much better charging actually than even the Rivian R1T, because the Rivian kept overheating, couldn't keep itself cool. A lot of that can be adapted through software, but it seems like the Ford's almost a step ahead. And if you remember a year ago or even 6 months ago when we were talking Mach-E, me especially, I was like, what are they doing? This thing is overheating. It can't keep itself cool. The charging's too conservative. A lot of that has been fixed, and it really feels like it's the next generation building off a lot of things they've learned with Mach-E. Now, there's definitely is still room for a lot of improvement here, and I don't believe we had the optimal DC fast charging session here because it does some weird things, and we're going to pick up and stop throughout the experience here. Oh, looks like I've gone away. There I am back. I guess we're just going to have to pull this one over a bit. I don't know. Let's get our screen arranged, and then I'll go over here. There we go. That's kind of, that works, doesn't it? Something like that. Awesome. So here is the deal. We have all of our information here on the left-hand side, our data, the EVgo screen. I'm just going to scooch forward here just for a half a second because I want to show you what to look out for in the EVgo screen. This is the amps that are being requested by the truck. Again, this charger is capable of putting 500 amps output. The voltage is the current charging voltage of the system. 166 kilowatts is basically this number times that number. Here's how long we've been plugged into, and here's how many kilowatt hours that have been delivered from the charger to the inlet port on the truck. Again, we're expecting at high amperage levels, typically 15-ish% loss, somewhere around there. Maybe more, maybe less. So let's start this thing. This is as soon as we go, I'm plugging in, battery pack's perfect temperature, 30, 31 degrees C, ready for fast charging. We're at very low states of charge, 0.5% displayed to the user. That displays as 0% to the truck, by the way. And let's hit play. Boom, instantly ramping, ramping, ramping. It goes right up to 157 kilowatts. Look at this, 468 amps being delivered to the truck. It is just juicing that thing. But the voltage is so low that the total power is only 160 kilowatts. So this is where having some more pack voltage would really, really, really help the charging speeds. And so, that's just an inherent disadvantage to the F-150 Lightning. I think there's no other way of putting it. We've reached almost 10% in 5 minutes right here, and the truck's going to do some wonky stuff as we start to move forwards. It's actually going to see this power dip as it comes and goes, and I'm not sure what's going on here. I saw this with the Mustang Mach-E when starting at 0% state of charge, and I don't know if it's doing a battery pack check, if it's trying to prevent lithium plating, which at this power level, I don't think we're even close to that, but I've only seen on this truck starting at 0. Any other time I've charged the F-150 Lightning, I have not experienced this. I have experienced it with Mach-E early on though. Look at this, peaking at almost 170 kilowatts right here. We're almost 10 minutes in. We're still doing 470 plus amps. It is just juicing this thing. And we've gone 25 kilowatt hours in 10 minutes. That is just really not bad. The thing charges pretty fast. And here's where I'm going to pause it and we're going to let it balance out. You can see we're down to 70 for some reason. It will recover here in a second, and that's where I want to pause, right about here, 165. I have noticed that the F-150 Lightning not only has an internal charging curve, but also a peak time rate. Now, if you remember in the Mach-E, it was about 3 minutes you could get at any point where you would plug in, and it would get everything it's got. It would take all the juice, assuming you weren't really high state of charge or the battery pack wasn't warm. But there definitely is we're going to allow more charging current to the truck for a certain period of time, and then we're going to artificially delay once we've reached that time limit. And on the Mach-E, it wasn't actually necessarily based off of time, it was based off of the number of amp hours flown in and out of the battery pack in a certain time stretch. And the F-150 Lightning seems to, in my experience, have somewhere between a 10 and 12 minute long peak, where it's actually going to derate off of 165 kilowatts here. I'll just hit play so I can show you. And it's going to level in that 140, 150 range until it starts to settle down into the 120s later on. And that peak, if we were to plug in here, we'd actually get more current going to it. You'd see in that 170 range. I've seen as high as, I think, 177 kilowatts delivered to this truck. And so that's what makes this truck so hard to sort of figure out is, basically this time-based charging profile on top of this internal profile. You can see here it's leveled out at about 373 amps going to the truck through the port, and then it's just sitting at 133. So we got the big peak for, again, between 10 and 12, 13 minutes. It kind of wandered down, and now we're at the ledge where it can kind of just sustain for a long time. Now, if we were to plug in even at 50% state of charge, fresh, without using up this 10-minute buffer, we'd actually probably go up to 170 kilowatts, which we've experienced and you've seen screenshots of online, and I've shown you in my first driver view. And so it's not nearly as bad as, sort of the Mach-E's situation where that you could almost just unplug and then plug the car in and it would actually charge faster by doing that. So as soon as it came off peak to recycle the charging, there's not really an immediate need to do that here with the F-150. And what it really does is to me, it kind of relaxes me at a charger a little bit because I know I'm just going to plug it in, kind of set it and forget it. It's doing, really the only reason I can imagine that it's doing this time-based charging profile is Ford is being conservative in areas where they don't have temperature sensors. So there's, that situation like the contactors on the Mach-E or some others. I don't know if that's a particular situation that we should, I don't have any data on that really, but what I have the impression of is you can't put sensors everywhere in your system. So some of it has to be modeled as to predicting what temperature a component might be, for example, a specific area of the battery pack or a connection point. And because you can't put sensors everywhere, you kind of have to think, okay, well, it could probably handle 10 minutes no matter the conditions at max power, and then we're going to have to derate. And that's what I imagine is going on here. But look at this. This is a very consistent, a very flat charging curve. 50% state of charge comes up in 28 minutes. We're at about 68 kilowatt hours at that point. It's not bad. It's not class leading, but it's not a reason to not buy the truck, the charging, in my impression. Certainly it's no Taycan, which is 12 minutes or even 10 minutes, 0 to 50%. But this is a much larger battery pack at much lower voltage. And for the most part, I think F-150 customers are going to be charging at home, I would imagine. It's a big truck to squeeze into some charging stations. I charged at a lot of different stations with this thing, and it's hard to maneuver it into some of them. Here we are, 120 kilowatts here at 58%. This is probably the weakest part of the charging curve, just this mid-section once you come off your 10-minute peak. Now, that being said, there's not much benefit to running this truck to 0 when fast charging. Actually, probably not beneficial at all. The best thing to do is probably target a 10 to 15% arrival to the next station and ride that peak when you have a little bit more pack voltage in there. So I would recommend sure, if it's easy for you just to pull in as low as possible, pull an out of spec move, go for it. But I think, the real thing here is charge it on the top end, work the top end of the battery pack where you're charging it till you hit this 120 kilowatt ledge around that 40-50%, and then maybe head to the next station. There's one last thing to consider here while we're just having a very consistent charging situation right now is towing. And when you're towing, the range is significantly decreased. And it's all based on the aero profile of the trailer and some weight impact, especially if hills are involved. And we've done all those tests. When you're towing, you need to charge deep into the battery pack. And right now, it is no issue to charge to 70% state of charge. I would say no issue to charge to 80% state of charge, because at 71%, we've just dipped off of 120 kilowatts. And I think I've seen actually 120 hold all the way to 80. So it's possible that we've hit a temperature limit. I've just paused it here, where the truck's trying to slow things down because it's come off of 45 degrees, or it's hit 45 degrees Celsius. And that might be its internal limit of temperature, where it starts to derate charging a little bit due to thermals. The other thing to consider here is I did hear the fans running at this point in the truck. The fans are really loud, and I don't recall, I filmed this actually the day that I got the truck, and I was like, oh, I'll film another one, and ran out of time. I don't recall if the air conditioning compressor was running. This unit right here might just be for the in-cabin cooling, although I'm pretty sure they use the same units, so I just think it wasn't doing any sort of air conditioning compressor work to chill to sub-ambient. I think the ambient air temperature was probably cool enough to cycle through the battery pack. That's just a guess. I don't know for sure, and this will be different given the temperature differences. I want to say it was about 72 degrees out when I did this test. Okay, continuing on. Anyway, we're still hovering. I think we're sort of derating because of temperature. This waffling would be my guess, but it pretty much holds 120 kilowatts to 80%. And that's when I would most recommend that you unplug and go. Charging past 80% in this truck sucks. Not as bad as Mach-E, but it sucks. And that's really the topic of what is this truck built for? And it's built for, I believe, really a unladen daily driver, or with some payload in it. When you start towing, the distances get big and the charging needs to get deeper into the pack. And as you charge deeper into the pack, you'll start to see it gets real slow. And that will really increase your time on a road trip with a trailer. The trailering is really the worst case scenario for an electric vehicle. And that's because you have to overcome the extra weight and resistance by burning more juice. You need to charge more frequently, and the charging stations are not set up for towing at all. So here we are, we've hit the 80% ledge. If you remember in the Mustang Mach-E, 80% would go to 12 kilowatts on the early software. Now it goes to 40. Here, it's actually still sort of, there is a ledge. It does about 60 kilowatts into the battery pack. You can see here 57. But what it's doing is it's sort of coming off. By the time we reach 90%, though, we'll be around 20 kilowatts. So as soon as you hit 80, it's a downhill slope. And I'll show you the charging curve at the end of this. The one thing I didn't record here is the 90 to 100% state of charge. And that's because I'm an idiot. In the truck, again, this is the first day that I had it, and I actually knew about this, but I couldn't get it to really work. There is a one-time max charging limit menu. So what you do is you hit the Ford F-150 Lightning in the top left of your user interface screen. You then go to Settings, Charge, and then inside of that charge menu, by the way, is the only place you can see your state of charge unless you're on comm screen or you're on Blue Cruise, both of hands-free Blue Cruise. That's a big miss. It should always show your state of charge on the screen somewhere. And then when you're in that menu, you can hit set one-time charge limit to 100%. In our experience, when you level 2 charge this truck, I'm just going to pause it here in just a second. Actually, no, I'll keep it going. It times out after 1 hour. That's an EVGO issue, so I just unplugged, replugged in, and we got back going again. When you plug into a level 2, it seems to just go to 100% state of charge, and you can set a charge limit anywhere from 0 to 100 in 1% increments. But when you plug into a DC fast charger, it automatically stops you charging at 90%. The truck will just stop. And every time you want it to go to 100% on a DC fast charger, you have to hit, forward settings, charge, set one-time limit, drag it to 100%. The screen's kind of laggy, and then hit save. And it's kind of infuriating. Even more infuriating than this whole set one-time charge limit is it's actually no faster to DC fast charge this truck from 90 to 100% than it would be to plug it into an 80 amp level 2 charging station, which is the maximum J1772 and the F-150 can handle. At 90%, it basically sits at 20 kilowatts and then walks its way down to 1 kilowatt all the way up top. And I actually have that all live streamed on Out of Spec Motoring. So if you're curious, you can head to that channel on the range test live stream. I pretty much start the live stream at 90%, and it takes a full hour to go from 90 to 100%. Just ridiculous. But that's a Ford thing. We knew that from Mach-E. And so don't ever plan to go above 90% at a DC fast charger. You're going to be wasting your life, and you're really going to be blocking the chargers, which is going to become a bigger issue. So here we go, 1 hour, 12 minutes from 0 to 90%, 1 hour, 12 minutes of straight charging, and there's your curve, 0 to 90%. That's the session, and I'll pause that. It already paused itself right there. Not terrible. So it's about an hour, let's just say plus or minus, to go from 0 to 90, a little bit less, a little bit more than that. And then here's what the curve looks like. So we can see I've plotted in this is charging power delivered to the truck, by the way, and I'll put in a little note, and I'll make this list shareable. And of course you can reference what was actually going into the battery pack. I just want to get the video up right now. So this is state of charge on the left, battery pack delivered, and here's the graph. All of these weird lines here, these dips, this is when the truck was waffling around earlier on. Can't figure out what was going on other than battery checks, making sure things were good. Again, I've only ever seen that behavior on a Mustang Mach-E. It's possible it was the charging station. I doubt it. I use that charger all the time. Never had the issue with another vehicle, but it is possible. And then you can see it pretty much go. You have this initial ledge that you get max power for about, let's just say 10 minutes. And then it just sits happily at this, sort of ledge that's about 30% off of peak. And in this case, it was about 130 kilowatts, maybe down to 120 here. And that pretty much holds all the way to 70% state of charge reliably. Maybe if you were to plug in a little bit later, if you were to plug in at 20% state of charge, your battery pack would still be a bit cooler. Maybe it could hold this ledge all the way to 80, which I've seen before. And then after 80, you really just want to get out and head to the next station. So a lot more to do with F-150 Lightning in terms of charging tests and things like that. It is very important to note that this is a 0 to 100% baseline or 0 to 90% baseline. If you are to plug in fresh at 50% state of charge, you'll see a lot more than 124 kilowatts. So this is a very different strategy to charging an electric vehicle than, let's say, a Tesla or a Rivian, where we can map a theoretical peak charging curve that could be achievable if we kept everything cool. Here in the F-150, you can have the perfect temperatures and it's still going to have this arbitrary time-based ledge, which really is just a protection. Again, I'm just spitballing here, guessing. I believe it's a protection when you don't have enough sensors throughout the battery pack to measure every single temperature area that might be getting hot. There you go, F-150 Lightning charging curve, extended range. I hear the standard range will peak at 150 kilowatts. I don't know what their press material says, but I know it's more than whatever Ford is claiming. I've seen, again, about 175, 177 kilowatt peak on the extended range, which is certainly good charging speed. It's not class leading, but it's no longer a reason not to buy a Ford electric vehicle. I would be totally comfortable owning and living with this curve and charging it up whenever I need to. And again, very little incentive to pull in dead and sort of ride this charging curve, as we normally say. This is a vehicle you pretty much charge to 70 or 80% and then head to the next charger. So thanks so much for watching another Out of Spec Reviews video. Let us know what other vehicles you want us to charge. We have about 7 charging curve videos filmed for you. I just kind of need to narrate them and plot them out like we're doing here, and get ready for a lot of charging stuff coming over the next few weeks. I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.